Hi, folks. Welcome to the Creative Nomad, presented by TrueAwesomeLife.com. I'm your host, JP Adkins, and I created this podcast because I want to tell the stories of the radicals, the ones who are out there making the world a better, more beautiful place, the amazing authors, artists, musicians, thought leaders, coaches, and yes, nomads who are out there living their true awesome lives and want to help others do the same. Are you ready to live your true awesome life? Go to TrueAwesomeLife.com and start your journey today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creative Nomad. I am so darn excited to be here today with Miss Liesel Hill. And, you know, we were off last week, so it seems weird. I'm like, oh, I'm back. If you're not watching for my TikToks, the Daily Jedis, they are pretty fun. You want to check those out. You can see them anywhere in short form, including YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram Reels. But Liesel, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Liesel Hill. I am a fiction author, a novelist, and have been for about 10 years. About a few years ago, I decided to try and give back and help other authors to both write and publish and also market their books. So I own a company called The Prolific Author. And yeah, that's what I do. I kind of coach and putting together a membership and just to help people get better written stories out into the world.
That is so awesome. Actually, when I first started my entrepreneur journey, that's what I was doing. I was helping authors self-publish.
Nice.
So it's a lot of fun. I do have a book out there also. I don't know how good it is, but it's all sex, drugs, and vampires. It's fun.
Oh, you're good then, yeah.
yeah. You know, trigger warnings all over the place. It was a little darker. It ended up being a little darker than I really wanted to be. And it was funny because my original editor said that my character was so much of an asshole that no one would want to read the second book. And then the funny thing is that at the same time, the character is based on me. The story is based off of the year of my life, and the character is based on me. Now, at the same time, one of my best friends wrote a character based on me also that happened to be an asshole. So everyone was saying how much of an asshole this character was. And I'm like, I guess I'm just an asshole in print.
Only in print, though.
Only in print. So, Liesel, what is it that, so many people want to write a book, right? They say, oh, I want to write a book. I have this book in me and I need to write this book. What is it that really stops people from doing it?
I think that, writing it would be really simplistic to say it's the hard work of it all, but it really is. I mean, it's a whole other almost lane of existence to go from having an idea for a story to getting it down on paper in a way that you can communicate that story to the reader effectively. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of mindset shift. And yeah, I mean, you sit around and you get brain cramps. It's actually really hard to do at first when you're not used to the whole process of it. So I think that's, most of it. And it's just, it can also be very daunting, to sit down and say, I'm going to write 100,000 word novel. That's so daunting that so many people just go, nope, can't do it, and go do something else instead. So I think what sets people apart, the ones who actually do get the writing done, is they just feel called to write it. They can't not work on it until they figure it out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. One of my friends, again, I have a lot of author friends. So he said, well, writers have to write. They just have to. And if you don't have to write, don't. And I realized that after the first one, I didn't have to write the second one. I'm like, oh, I really don't need to write that. Okay. And then I didn't even have this drive for this book. So it's not like people aren't clamoring for this. But it's funny. You said communicating in a way that readers will get. I knew my ending 3/4 of the way through the book, right? Knew the ending halfway through the book, knew where it went, knew how it ended, knew how the second one started, knew the whole thing, and realized I wrote in first person and I couldn't write that ending. So that ending wouldn't work because, I'm not going to tell you, but it just doesn't work. He can't write that. There's no way for him to write it. So it was a real challenge to go back and go, how do I tell this here?
Mm-hmm.
How do
I? Yeah, it's point of view. You have to always keep your point of view consistent. And that's one of the biggest challenges for, early writers and first time writers. You don't realize that you tend to head hop or switch point of views, and you can't really do that. I mean, I suppose you can, but it's considered not good writing because it kind of jerks the reader out of the story. So yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges of figuring out your writing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And what ends up it ends up pissing a lot of people off. So I actually had to start I had to put, because I did write, like, I actually have 6 chapters of the next book done.
Nice.
So I had to add the first chapter of the next book as a prologue, just to, like, because he couldn't write it. Like,
Right.
So it had to be said. It had to be,
Yeah.
And, I'm like, you suck.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Yeah.
So, one of the things is that one of the things I helped authors with for a long time is after they publish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're self-publishing, then one of the problems is you don't have that support for marketing. You don't have that support for even finding a cover and editor and stuff like that. So how do you help authors doing that?
Well, yeah, that's definitely, let's unpack that a little bit, because to be fair, there's always been a split. There's always been either traditional publishing or indie publishing. And most people believe that traditional publishing means that you get all this support in the marketing, and that's really, truly not what it means. All it means is that they produce the book. So they will do the cover and they will do a lot of the editing, which of course is nice to be able to not have to do that yourself. But when it comes to marketing, you still have to do your own marketing, even if you're a traditional author. So what I do, I do teach things like pay-per-click ads and things like that, Amazon ads, Facebook ads. But at the same time, it's becoming so crowded in the space. It's becoming so, so much competition that those are not generally lucrative until you have a semi-decent backlist. So at least 5 books, 10 would be better. And so that's more for, slightly more advanced authors. What I like to focus on, especially for new authors, is learning how to market their story. And of course, that starts from writing a story that has marketable elements. So I focus a lot on not only writing a great story, but pulling out some of those things like the tropes within the genres that will make marketing later much, much easier. But it's also true that you have to kind of become a marketing expert in your own right in order to market your books successfully. And that really scares a lot of people. It scares a lot of first-time authors. But I like to teach it in a way that, it's not slimy. It's not like used car salesman stuff. It's not broadcasting, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. It's genuinely connecting with the audience who wants your book, and then, communicating to them why they would enjoy your book. That's what true marketing is just communication between whoever's producing the product and whoever is, looking to purchase it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things have you found that things like being in an author collective groups, really help with that, and having like friends that are kind of in your same genre, maybe not writing the same things, but the same genre. Does that help you a lot?
Yeah, so there's kind of different levels of that. So I am a huge, huge proponent of critique groups among authors. I've been with the same people for years and years, and we, send chapters to each other and critique one another's chapters. That gives really excellent feedback into your writing and can really up-level your writing. In terms of marketing, there's lots of groups you can join. There are podcasts that are about author marketing. There are 1,000,001 groups on Facebook you can join. There's a lot of people who are willing to share what they've done and what they've learned. And that definitely helps, because at least you know what options you have, what other people are doing that is working. And of course, it's constantly changing as the algorithms change, and you know how it is. Social media every day is changing, getting upgraded and things like that. So yeah, definitely sharing wins with each other and keeping up on, what is working now versus what was working in 2014 is definitely helpful.
Oh my goodness. I'll never forget. You used to be able to go into Facebook groups, because Facebook groups were new when I first started. And you could go into a Facebook group, drop a link, and they would buy the book.
Right.
It was like, oh, you just dropped the link in all these groups, that were centered around your genre. Right. And yeah, that stopped working real quick. Oh.
Yep. Those groups still exist, but yeah, I know that they don't get the traction that they used to.
No. What I found, one of the groups that is a recommendation is a reader led group for recommendations,
Mm-hmm.
and that seems to work really well.
Mm-hmm.
So and people will tell them their favorite book in this genre, blah 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 blah. Blah. Oh, have you read this? Have you read that? Have you read this? And that seems to work really well. Um, the other one that you have to have your own group, kind of like your own fan club.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one of my first things as an entrepreneur is I created this space to create fan clubs, which
Oh
was really
yeah.
kind of cool. Yeah, before Facebook groups was Facebook groups. Facebook groups was kind of new and didn't have the features it had. I had almost all the
Right.
features that Facebook groups has now,
Okay.
and the money equated to real money in the store, so they can
Mm-hmm.
literally, if they interacted with you a lot, they got free books.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was really cool. It was, again, 100 years ago now. It feels like 100 years ago.
Right. Yeah. 2014 might as well be in terms of technology.
Yeah. So I know I'm kind of an expert at this, and so I'm trying to ask the questions that I know that people need.
Mm-hmm.
What is, like, really, what do you think is working now in this moment? You've written the book, you got it out there, you found the editor and all that. You're self-published, or you got a traditional publisher. You're right, some of the publishers are horrible at marketing, um, but the publishers are disappearing.
Yes,
That's the other
they
thing.
are. Yeah.
Um, Actually, almost every in the gay mail genre, all the publishers are gone.
Really?
Yeah, all the big ones, and there was a couple really big ones for a minute there,
Mm-hmm.
just gone.
Yeah.
So
In terms of what's working, I would say that it's going to sound a little bit trite, but consistency is a big thing. And you also want to make sure that you're writing to market, which some people push back against, but it just means giving the audience what they want. So you kind of need to, when you develop a genre and make sure and bring out the tropes and write a truly decent story. I mean, speaking of 2014, there was a time when Amazon first popped up that you could throw a book up that was really poorly edited and had a terrible cover that you just made yourself in Microsoft Word or something, and it would still sell,
oh, oh my
Yeah.
god, that hurt me.
It really happened. Like, I've seen really successful books that when they first were put up, they did that. But of course, there were people gaming the system, and Amazon quickly adapted, and that's not true anymore. And there are just millions of books out there because anybody who wants to can publish. So in order to stand out, you really have to have a very high quality story. That's one of the things I focus on. And the problem is that most authors don't think they need storycraft. They're like, no, I got the story down. It's all good. But they really do. You need to focus on how to create a very cohesive story. And that's one of the main things I teach, because it really does make a difference in how often people download your stuff, whether they will come back to you as an author because they know you know how to write a great story. You need to make sure that there's some sort of character transformation in that story. That's actually the bedrock of a good fiction story. And most people couldn't even tell you that. Even most authors couldn't tell you about that. And then after that, it's just being consistent. Like I said, no one's going to, with the exception of very few outliers, no one's going to get rich off one or two books. You know what I mean? Most people who are doing very well have very large backlists, like 50 books, and so they can pull in bulk from that every single month. And that is how they're making a living. So you have to be consistent. You have to nail down processes to get those books written, churn them out. I mean, make sure they're high quality, but still consistently be able to build that backlist. And then, be patient and get to the point where you actually can do it. Most people who want to live off their author royalties, it takes them a few years to get there. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
So I don't think that there's any one thing that's working. I mean, we could talk about Facebook ads and Amazon ads and BookBub ads and, email marketing, all of those things. You can get them to work if you do them correctly. And they are very effective. But there's also people who are doing them that it's not effective for. So, you have to look at what's really the common denominator there, and it's really writing a very high quality, emotionally affecting story, and then just creating a backlist of stories so that you can consistently pull different readers in through your funnels of your different books and series and things.
Yeah, and I think that, just like I would say to anyone else, if it's not working organically, it's not going to work paid.
Right. Very true.
So if you are sitting there doing something and you're not getting any hits off of it, just posting it on Facebook and into different places, don't pay to post it further. It's not going to help.
Yeah.
And people waste a lot of money,
Yes.
just trying to, I can boost this for $10 and, whatever Facebook wants to throw at you. And you're like, it doesn't help you if you're not getting it organic. At least a few hits. Look at what your ratio is, especially if you're using your page. The only time pages are good really is to notice that. And if you are now a content creator, what Facebook calls a content creator, you got the new profile. That's really helpful because then you can actually look at your insights, and it's still an organic page, whereas Facebook pages really don't help you.
Yeah. And that can be done as well through your book reviews. If you have, even if you don't have very many because you're brand new and only 4 people have read it, if most of them, and this has to be strangers, not your mom, but you've gotten some people who have read the book and genuinely like it, then that'll tell you that if, in bulk, if you were to pay to get more traffic, you'll have a pretty good result, but if you've got a lot of people leaving kind of mediocre reviews or saying the story just wasn't quite what they wanted it to be, you might want to go back and, rework that a little bit before throwing money at it.
Yeah, it just reminds me of the horrible reviews my book got. I had to put trigger warnings on it, because it was sex, drugs, and vampires. Like the guy, literally, the story is he goes in and finds out he's a vampire, and then has this whole. He's a genetic vampire. So basically, what happens is that he was awakened by having sex with another genetic vampire, and then he ends up doing drugs and all kinds of crap, and because of just the environment he was in, he ended up with a whole bunch of vampires and hanging out with some bad people, although they're not bad people, they're all amazing. And it's literally based off of a year of my life that I don't know how I survived. And everything in that story happened, maybe not exactly the way it's said, and there's a thin vampire element over it, but really everything in that story happened somehow. Right down to, there was two of the people that were living with us would go down to the school at the end of the block and start taking sledgehammers and seeing how many walls they can knock down before the roof would cave in.
Oh, wow.
Cement, cinder block walls. And, and so I wrote that in as they were running through the walls, but really, this really happened. It was like,
right. Yeah.
So, it was just really an interesting time of my life, and I think that it was fun to write it down. And as the people that were all involved, all read it and they all laugh because they're like, yeah, that kind of happened, and that happened, and that kind of happened. So
it brings up an interesting question, because sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and it's really funny when you have people looking at fiction saying that's not realistic, and you're going, except that it 100% happened.
There's a sex scene in the book that actually literally happened. Exactly how it was written. Not even any. There was no vampire stuff in that scene. Everything was exactly as written. And they're like, that could never happen. I'm like, that happened exactly like that. Not even a little bit. Actually, there's 2 in there that was, happened exactly. One was an actual drug episode, and the other one was an actual, and the other one wasn't. But it was written as a vampire scene because he was all messed up on blood, and then which was actually drugs, and then the other one was written just as it happened, and it was actually funny. It was one of the So it's interesting when you actually get down in there, right, and actually start getting written, and when characters start moving. So how do you help people really narrow that, right? So my first book it was all real, it all happened, everything happened. The second book was all pretty fiction.
Okay.
There's pieces that are put in, but most of it was fiction. So the second book, I know where it goes, and I know I just refuse to write the next scene. And my view says, no, you're not gonna fucking write that scene, or you're not gonna write it. So
Yeah. So when you say narrow that, you mean how do you like get the story written?
Yeah. How do you narrow down? You have 1,000 ideas, and then how do you narrow it into like, hey, this is what I'm going to write?
So I have a whole process that I teach, the prolific author method. And I usually start with having people sort of journal or free write about how they came up with the story. So in your case, it was because it really happened, or if you're doing your fictional one, maybe it's a jumping off from the first part. But I just have them just kind of explore it, relax their brain and just sort of go in kind of a stream of consciousness sort of way, so that they can explore how the story came about for them, and then talk about why they want to tell the story, why it's important for them as a person, as a writer, to tell the story. And the reason that I do that is because in order to write a really solid story, I think it's important for the author to understand what their emotional connection to it is. And once they have that, they can kind of transform that into the theme of the story. And after that, really the trick is to make sure that everything in the story revolves around that theme and is pointed to that theme. And that way it makes the story very cohesive. You're not like going over here doing one thing and then going over there doing another, which unfortunately people who pant stories rather than outline them tend to do a lot. They tend to kind of meander all over the place. And that's fine. A lot of times they use their first draft to do that and really nail down what the story is about. But I teach in a way to do it a little more quickly, so that doesn't take you 6 months to write your manuscript. But really, you just need the cohesion in the story. And if you have other ideas, all authors have a million ideas, coming out their ears and everything, but you just want to focus the story toward one thing. And then, of course, those other ideas can come in a different story, later on. So it's really just about keeping on the rails so that you're not completely losing the story thread, and then you write something that feels very complete and very cohesive.
Yeah, I agree. I think that. What do you think about tools like NaNoWriMo or Camp Nano?
I think that they are good for certain things. Different tools are used for different things. I actually had a conversation with someone else last week where we were talking about batching content. And I actually do batch my writing these days. I'll spend an entire day doing the writing and then an entire day doing the editing, so that I'm getting a lot of words for the week. But that's because I have a different side of my business I have to work on the other days. And I feel a little bit hypocritical doing that, because I teach my students to write daily, create a daily writing habit. But the reason it's really not as hypocritical as it sounds is because you have to train your brain to get the writing done. Once you get to the point where you can sit down and just switch it on, then you can do whatever writing whenever you want to do it. You can do it by word count. I'm going to do 10,000 words this week, and then however long it takes you, you're good, But it's important first to train your brain to be able to do that. So it's kind of the same with Nano. Nano originally was used for people who just didn't want to stop and edit, didn't want to overthink it, just push through and get your manuscript done. Because there's a lot of empowerment in getting that first manuscript written. And then, of course, you can take all the time you need to go back and edit it. And I think that Nano is really good for that, in helping people to accomplish that, to get their first manuscript done, because then they feel like, okay, I did it once, now I have this, and I can do it. And it's a big deal for moving them forward in their writer's journey. There's a lot of people who don't like it, and that's fine too. But I think it, like I said, it just has its uses for certain things, and it's at the same time not for everybody.
Yeah. What do you think about the serial rating? Like, gosh, what is that called now? I actually have one up, and I can't even think about it. The Kindle.
Oh, Kindle Vella?
Yeah, and things like that.
I have not used it yet. I actually have been thinking about, maybe testing it out a little bit. But I spoke with an author. I interviewed an author on my podcast who talked about it in a lot of detail. And just like, like we talked about the way Amazon was in 2014, it's in its really early days right now, which means you theoretically could have a lot of success on it because there's not a lot of competition, and Amazon doesn't have really stringent rules. Like, it's really surprising me how open it is. I'm like, wow, they let you do that. They don't let you do that for KU,
Yeah.
But I'm sure they will eventually buckle down on things. But right now they're just trying to kind of get it going. So again, it's just a different sort of thing. It's a completely different audience than just writing an entire ebook and selling it together to write a serial. I even asked my email list, I said, hey, if I put something on Kindle Vella, would you read it? And 90% of them said no. And they're like, not that we don't like your stuff, but we just would probably wait till you put it in book form because we don't prefer to read that way. You know, so it's just a completely different audience.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a bad thing. If you can make it work, it's just reaching more readers and a different kind of audience. So nothing wrong with it. I do know that you need a lot of patience. You can't like pop a few chapters up there and think you're going to be making, you know, rolling in the money or anything like that. You got to kind of wait it out and be patient over the long haul.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I released my journal and my serial at the same time, and I released 6 chapters of the because I had them. I had wrote them a while ago, and it's just a fun little. It was a fun little story. It's kind of quirky and stupid, and that's what I wanted at the time. So I went and posted that, and I posted my journal at the same time. I sold 5 copies of my journal that month, and I had like 2,000 reads on Vella. It was like, oh, I actually made money from Amazon this month. Like, what happened? Like,
weird.
Wait, you know, my book has been out for a year. You know, my book, I think I published like 6 years ago, and haven't done anything with it, and it didn't release the second one, didn't do any of that. So it's sit there. Once in a while, I'll get like, you know, the 50 cents. Whatever it is, and you go, oh, someone bought my book. Cool. I wonder if they reviewed it. And then you get the review, and you're like, oh, I wish they didn't want to review it. No. I have a couple good reviews for that book. It wasn't completely horrible. It was just that people were, I think, expecting it not to be like I literally had to put sex, drugs, vampires.
Yeah.
Because people were.
Well, that's one thing that we've kind of learned too is people they actually would prefer to have an idea of what's going to be in the book, and that they care more about that than if you were to even actually spoil it. So for example, with romance books, if you don't have the happily ever after in this book, you have to put that in the blurb or they're going to be mad at you. But if you just say, oh, it's not coming in this book, there's going to be a sequel, it'll be that book, then they'll be like, oh, okay, you know. But you will literally get readers yelling at you if there is not a happily ever after. So things like that, I can see people have learned to do that, to say exactly what kind of book it is, what the, you know, heat level is, things like that, and actually put those in the blurb. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have readers that are upset with you, you know.
Yeah, so, I mean, one way or the other. And it's funny because like I said, I started this. I still have one author client that I work with, and she, I think, is writing her 60th book releasing her 60th title and total, because she has a couple of her series have been translated. So she's like on her like 110th or 120th release.
Good for her.
Yeah, she's amazing. I love her. Patricia Logan, if you're listening, go check her out. She is an amazing author. My favorite book is not everyone else's favorite, so I won't put it out there, but it's Captive Lover. And it's still my favorite cover I ever did in my life. I don't know why I didn't win. I don't know why I didn't win that year. But she did a serial, and it was of novellas, and she had to literally say, yeah, they're gonna meet this book. It'll be, you know, there will be something, you know, they might be dating, they might not be, like, you know, it's there. It's a serial.
Yeah.
Serial, like in big letters. Like it's the first one.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to you need to know your audience, and we tend to think of that in terms of genre, which is true, but there's also the type of reader they are, and so you kind of have to get familiar with that as well and be super transparent about it.
Definitely. So, Liesel, how does people get a hold of you?
So I have a podcast called The Prolific Author, which you can listen to anywhere that you find podcasts. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I've got a Facebook community that's also called The Prolific Author. Most things, actually on Instagram, it's _prolific author, but mostly if you just search Prolific Author, it'll come up. I do have a free PDF if anyone is interested in it. It's called 10 Plot Thickening Elements That Every Bestseller Includes. You can find it at bit.ly/10plot, and make sure and capitalize that P, or it'll give you a 404 error. But yeah, you can find me any of those places, and feel free to leave me a comment or send me an email, or I'd love to hear from people.
Awesome. And that will be on the show notes page. You can get her website either up or down, depending where you're watching this. But all of it will be on the show notes page over at the Creative Nomad Show. Liesel, thank you so much for being here. It's nice to talk to authors because it's like going home for me. So
yeah, thank you for having me. It was nice to talk to you too.
I look forward to getting to know you much better.
Yeah, right back at you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Nomad Show. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, go to creativenomadshow.com. There's also a link at the bottom. If you are a radical and would like to be a guest, you can apply to be on the show there. Thanks again, and know that you are loved. Awesome Life, we look for the world changers who want to live in creativity, authenticity, and profitability whenever, wherever. So check out trueawesomelife.com and let's get started.